You are listening to the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast, episode number 149, the love story that inspired me to move with Garrett. Welcome to How to Get Over Your Ex, a podcast on getting over your ex without it just taking time. I'm your host, Breakup Coach Dorothy. Let's turn your pain into power and your heartbreak into happy. Hello, my beautiful brave hearts. How is everyone doing? I have an amazing guest here today with you, my friend and colleague, Garrett. I am so pumped. Thank you so much, Garrett, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel like I was a part of the birth of this podcast years ago when you were talking about getting it going. So it's really special.
Yes. Okay. So I already have so many things I want to say about just our friendship in general in the beginning. So just so everyone knows, Garrett and I have been friends since 2019. It was before I did the podcast. I started the podcast in November of 2019. I met Garrett early, I think 2019 or late 2018 in Boston. And we did the Summit of Love, which is an event that Katie Grimes had hosted, and Garrett and I were both speakers at that event. And it was so much fun. I loved it so much. And then after that event, I feel like our friendship really just kind of escalated and we bonded over coaching and business stuff and life and all the things. And we would go to the Wing in Boston, which is a women's co-working space designed for women, which was one of my favorite places ever. I was obsessed. I loved it so much. And then I feel like we've been integrated into each other's businesses a lot. I think you had me on your podcast I was once or twice. And then even you had a podcast before I had a podcast. And I was like, oh my gosh, Garrett, I'm thinking about doing this podcast. I've wanted to do it for forever. Should I do it? And you were like, yes, and all the things. And it was so fun. And then also Garrett has been a speaker at the Braveheart Festival, as well as inside of the Get Over Your Ex program. And I always have her come on and talk about dating as self-exploration, because as you guys will get to know throughout this episode, she has a book. It's really amazing. I'll let her introduce it, but I read it and it was so awesome. And then here's my favorite part. This is my favorite part. All my brave hearts, listen in very, very carefully. So Garrett has the most adorable relationship. And after going through my very traumatic breakup, and then I was in a relationship with a new person, but watching Garrett and her partner was something that was very life-changing for me to see what was out there. She was an amazing example of what's possible. And here's the cool part. She's getting married soon. And when this episode comes out, I think you will have been married one day. Finally, yes. After a 3-year thing.
Yes.
So I really wanted to bring Garrett on, and I know that some of you who might be listening, you're listening and you're really in the midst of this very deep, dark heartbreak right now. So when I'm talking about this stuff, I'm not talking about oh my gosh, look at her. She's doing so great with this relationship. I hope you feel terrible. That's not what I'm saying at all. I just want you to see this as an example of what's possible for you. And we're going to talk about it because Garrett didn't just not have any heartbreak in her life at all. She went through her own heartbreak. She went through dating so many people. And she's going to discuss all of that with us here today, just so that you can see where she did get, because I think it is an amazing, epic love story that everyone needs to hear. And if you're not someone who likes to listen, you can just go to the show notes now and click and get the book and then come back and listen after you read the book. So that's also available to you. Okay. Garrett, let's get started. I'm so excited. Please tell us about yourself. Where are you? What do you do? Who are you? Tell us all the things.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I feel like there's so much to say and do. My name is Garrett. I often introduce myself at parties, Garrett, like the guy's name, because people don't ever expect that coming. I'm sitting with you here in New Hampshire. Well, you're in Florida, but I'm in New Hampshire. I spent 6.5 years in Boston, which is so weird because I'm a Midwesterner at heart. I was born and raised in Indiana. I know you are Midwestern-ish. It's Northern, but you're a Midwest girl too. And I am an intuitive guide. I really started calling myself that in the beginning of this year because I realized what I was doing was much more flirting with psychic channeling versus just strategy. So I do intuitive guiding for entrepreneurs, and I also would do what I guess what's more familiar as mindset coaching for people with body image and food relationship and money stuff, for lack of a better term. So I love my one-on-one coaching. Obviously, writing is a huge part of my life, and podcasting. So those are the things I do. I'm also a mom to a 1-year-old, and that is like a whole other business. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Yes. And it just reminded me of how many synchronicities we've had. The whole like Midwest thing and us being in Chicago, because you lived in
Chicago.
Chicago for a while and then you moved to Boston. And I was living in Chicago and then moved. And it's like I just missed you as you were.
Kentucky.
And that's so wild, so crazy. Okay. So now we need to know about your heart-wrenching breakup. Because everyone who's listening has or is going through a heart-wrenching breakup. So we want to hear about all the juicy details of yours. Tell us what happened. Tell us all the things.
I'm going to give you guys like a montage because there have been many, but I want to give some facts because as I was thinking about this question, figuring that you would ask, I was like, wow, I've got some interesting facts. So I'll start by saying that I went on 55 dates with 35 unique individuals in the year 2016 and part of 2015. So there were a lot of dates that were like micro breakups because I just felt rejected time and time again. My book actually refers to 3 different guys, none of whom are who I am marrying, that all had, we'll say, like borderline macro breakups. Well, one of them wasn't macro, but the biggest heart-wrenching thing that ever happened to me / for me was a breakup that I went through in college where I literally didn't know senior year if he was coming to propose or break up with me. So talk about shock. He showed up at my house and I knew by the look on his face that he was going to break up with me. So I said, you're not coming in here. I don't want any bad memories in this house. It's senior year. It's a fun year. It's the beginning of the year. Like, get out. So we went to his car and I saw all of my things in the back. He read me a letter of the 10 things that are wrong with me. And I was like, I don't even know. It was like an out of body experience, but it was like a movie because I lived with 8 other women. Some of them, Dorothy, you got to meet Danielle and Jaeger and Shannon and Audrey, Molly, Carly. And so I ran upstairs, I grabbed all of his things and I started chucking them down the stairs because the stairs went straight out the front door. So he's like kind of trying to come in the house and my friend Shannon was like blocking him and I'm throwing things and he's like dodging it. And my friends are just watching this happen. Everyone was home. It was a Friday afternoon. And then it ended in like my friend Molly making us sit in a circle and sing Kumbaya. And I was just like, it was awful. But the heart-wrenching part was like, I hadn't really been through a lot of grief before. And that was my first awakening when like I would wake up and think like I was going to miss a text from him, or I'd wake up like thinking we had plans. Like that was really intense. And I realized like, oh, this is what grief is. But at that time I was so young, I was 22. I actually used distraction as like my healing process. And then, moving into Chicago, I realized how much was for me. I grieved so much up front for about 6 months that by the time I got to Chicago and I graduated school, I was like, let's hit the ground running. And it was sort of like over. So that was more like an intense, heart-wrenching, traumatic thing. And then the other one that feels really important to share is the one, Dorothy, you know a lot about, that I wrote a lot about in my book. And I even talked to you about like years later, was this guy I dated hot and heavy for about 8 months. Like spiritual soul contract level depth to us. Families are friends. And we kind of ended, but like we don't know why. It was just like a little tiff on a phone call. And I said, if you hang up on me, I'm not coming this weekend. We were going to like help Florida Georgia Line give their new guitarist like a surprise party. And he was in the music industry. And he hung up. And then I was stubborn and I was like, well, okay, then I'm not going. And if I'm not going, then we're done, because I made that up. And so we were done. And then I moved to Boston and I was so shell shocked by the East Coast, new city, no friends. I'm only here for a year. I'm going to work, started my own business. And then he got married. And it was like, I still didn't want to grieve it. I did not open that box. Honestly, I started to process a lot of it actually when I met my partner now, which talk about a crazy experience. You're like, I love this man and this thing is coming up and he's in my dreams. And so that I had to do a lot of spiritual work around. It was like a very slow burn that like you even said to me at one point at the wing, you were like, are you over him? So, I mean, that was 2014 to 2019. That was 5 years. That's probably not the best advice, but it's true for me. So yeah.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. Thank you for sharing those too, because I think I didn't know about the college one. And I feel like that's such like I almost like love that experience for you and for anyone who goes through it. But I'm just like, that's what really like what real love feels like sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, and I also can totally see Molly making you guys sit in a circle saying goodbye.
Yes, it
Oh,
was a
so
moment.
good. So good. Okay. Yeah. So for those of you who are really interested in these stories, which they're all like really juicy stories, I highly recommend her book. It's called Dare to Move. I will absolutely link it in the show notes. So definitely check that out. Okay. So then you have to tell us more about these heartbreaks. Tell us what were the biggest struggles in terms of getting over them. So it sounded like the grief was one in the first story. And then the second story, it's interesting that you didn't start really processing it until later. So what were the biggest obstacles? What were the biggest struggles that you had for those heartbreaks and how did you overcome them? If someone's going through them, something similar, you know?
Absolutely. I think, the grief is everyone has their own unique process with grief, which I didn't really understand, but there was an inner voice telling me like, feel this, feel your feelings, feel your feelings. So I would vacillate between like, feel my feelings really hard in my room and like cry to music and cry to like a love story movie to like going out and drinking and having fun with my friends in college. And somehow that alchemized into healing for me. But with my ex, from Nashville, that was so hard because he cut off all communication for, I would say like maybe like the first year. So I went from like the hardest, and I don't know if anyone can relate to this, but it was almost like I had seen so much of the future timeline, and you've probably talked about this. I know you talk about this. That it was like I was having this trippy experience of like, but my body thought I was supposed to be there. Like I couldn't accept my own reality. And to add a layer onto that of why it was so hard for me is because I actually moved to Boston with sort of a victim mentality and a low money mindset mentality of like, well, I have to do it because I have to keep this job and I have to have a job because I have to make money. And it was not really my heart wanted to stay in Chicago. And so first I tried to blame the breakup on the move, that it was my stress and I caused this. But I was so not self-aware and so ashamed that I felt like I caused it, that I just didn't want to think about it. So I kind of imagine it like I put it in a box, like you put your old favorite photos and photo albums. And like every once in a while I would go look in that box and like, it would be a certain song that would take me there. And I'd be like micro grieving, but also like, I'd find my mind like actually wondering if he still like would like me. And that I was like, I know this is dangerous and I'm lonely in Boston. I don't have any friends. I'm working a lot. And so it was all very unhealthy. And then I actually manifested a really unhealthy, toxic relationship. And I didn't love the guy. I didn't really even like him. I don't know why. I don't really know why I was dating him. Probably because I was not healed, not well. And actually my ex was a kind of a jealous type person who would always not want to hear about stuff. But what I learned in that was that part of my healing process was talking about it, and talking about it with him was not ideal.
Are you, because I know you're a projector. Are you self-projected?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like how interesting is that too? Because I'm self-projected and I didn't even realize like all the talking about like how I have to talk things through to process them and to make decisions. I'm supposed to use my voice and like all of that. So,
Oh,
so
same.
interesting.
I think the last time we compared charts with, and I have sounding board intuition too. I think we're very, and like throat
Yeah.
is defined.
Weird that we have podcasts.
Yes. Oh, I will say I'm looking at some notes you sent me that were so helpful for me because I have so many stories to like really think about what I want to say about overcoming it. For me, I will say writing my book, speaking of speaking and writing and communicating, that was a very massive milestone that for me was like, okay, I'm releasing this to the world. And then this isn't in my book because it happened later. But 6 years later, almost to the day I met him, I hung out with him and my fiance and his parents. And that was a very full circle moment. And I could see, and even his parents are lovely people, but they were like, you guys are the same person. You were not supposed to be together. And like, it was just like, we were all on the same page. Like this was something, even though it was 6 years ago and it was only 8 months. Like, that's what I mean, that it was on this like spiritual soul contract level. And I felt like everyone was around a table and we all had this like, oh yeah, moment. And then it was like alchemized.
Oh, so beautiful. I'm so glad. Well, and it makes a lot of sense. It's almost like you got your story out there. It actually kind of reminds me of just like the breakup coaching business is of like, for me, it was like, this was my way of healing is this has to be for something bigger. And then being able to take my pain and my story and what I've learned from it and being able to help other people, which is also what you did with your book. Like, it's just a way of making it something bigger for myself and for you.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's all purposeful.
That's amazing. I never really even saw that. That's
Mm-hmm.
cool. I love it.
Powerful.
All right. So here's the other thing. One of my favorite things about Garrett is her love story with Jeff. It's like such divine timing that you guys are about to get married. So tell us all the things. You wrote your book, covers a lot of this. So if any of you are listening, want to hear all of the ins and outs, you can buy her book. But tell us about your journey to Jeff.
Yeah. And I'll kind of give some pillars from the book, but there were, after college, after that pretty traumatic breakup, there were 3 guys. There was Mr. Wrong. There was what I kind of consider like wrong time. And it's obviously they're all not right for me, but like kind of like wrong guy. Then it was like wrong time. And then it was like trauma bonding kind of guy. And after him, I dated the 55 people, 35 individuals. One of my jokes was that like, I was getting stood up by guys that like I shouldn't have even been going out with. Like these guys weren't even worth it. And they weren't even cute. Like I just was really struggling. I was not in my worthiness and I was fully in my maiden self. So if you know anything about the female archetypes, the maiden is like adventurous and confident and sexy and sexually liberated. And she is just like, I'm going to go after it. Like I would go up to the guys at the bar. And so as much as that was fun and that was empowering and I learned so much about myself, I was definitely down in the dumps because I knew that my Prince Charming was out there. And so about 3 months before I met Jeff, I was really sick. I had one of those little moments where you're just kind of like, and I don't have a partner and you're just like throwing it all in there and you're just down on yourself. And I flipped it around in that moment. And I was like, no, he's out there. And what if he's sick? I'm going to say a prayer for him right now. And I just had this moment where I was like, I wonder, like, he's the kind of guy that maybe he was fishing today. And I know he has long hair and like, oh my God, I was describing Jeff. Turns out we tracked it in the future. He was sick the same weekend that we were talking about. Cause it was like Thanksgiving weekend. So we were
of course. And you guys, Jeff, like, can you please paint the picture of Jeff right now? Because he's just like the coolest outdoor, like I don't even know him like super well. I only know him through you. And I'm like madly in love with him. I love him.
He is. So we were set up through one of my old clients who is his boss. And our first date was 17 hours long. He decided to take me snowboarding and he didn't think that it was weird because he's such a good-hearted person. He didn't think it was weird to take a blind date on a 2-hour car ride to go snowboarding. My prerequisite was that he had to be taller than 5'9", and he is 5'11". He has like the body of like an underwear model, and he has this like long hair and brown eyes. And my friends, when I came back after the first date and I told them about him, one of my friends' boyfriends says, "What is he, Jesus?" And I was like, well, he kind of looks like him. But anyway, he's so grounded, and he's super strong, super loving, super outdoorsy. And like, I can't say this enough to the people listening. Like, he is, if someone had said, Garrett, you write down 20 pages or 1,000 pages of everything you want, I couldn't have, with my monkey mind, created him. There were a lot of things about him that I manifested, and he has parts of every guy that I've ever loved, the thing that I loved about them. Like, he is a manifestation, and the universe was so much smarter than I was. So it's like the second I surrendered, my surrendering moment was the night before our date. I tried to break my lease to move. I was like, I'm out of here. Like, I'm done. Not just because of dating, all these things, but, anyway, Jeff is a hunter. He hunts elk. He is a fisherman. He's a snowboarder. He's a finance guy. We met in Boston, and yeah, he's an incredible dad too. A really good co-pilot, really good co-partner.
I have chills. And you say co-pilot, but you're not even joking because you fly. So.
Yeah, we do fly together. He trusted me to fly him around, so that was pretty cool.
I love it. So cool. Awesome. Okay. So now that you are where you are now, what would you tell your younger version of you?
So very little Garrett was like princesses, Prince Charming, all about the fairy tale. And so one of the things that kept me going through the, 55 dates that obviously did not end well. I mean, they're traumatic stories, are all in the book, and fun stories too. But like, you're still like, you're a frog. You're not it. Is that Prince Charming is real. If you believe it fully, he's real, he's coming, or she's real, she's coming. But you just have to keep holding on to that, because I'm sure people can relate, but there were so many dates where I'm like, fuck it, I don't want to do my makeup. Why am I paying for, I don't know, a spray tan or a new shirt? Or one of my big things was time, because I was teaching 5 a.m. workouts, and guys would want to meet on a Thursday night. I'm like, well, I have to be up at 5. And if I do the math, I'm going to get like 4 hours of sleep. And so I just kept believing that it was, and there were so many times that I wanted to throw that dream in the towel, and I could see myself justifying, well, this guy is not really fit, but he's nice, or I was just justifying things. So I would go back and tell myself to like keep that so strong and so steady. And then I would also tell myself to like get in my body more and not in my head, because I think a lot of my decision-making throughout my process, which, it's all for us, but in hindsight, like, if I had been more connected to my body, a little bit more connected to my intuition, I think I would have been in greater trust. And although I did have some fun, I probably would have had a lot of more fun with the dating process.
I love that, because now I think you do such a great job of painting such a beautiful, fun, like picture of how the dating process can be fun. At least you did that in like the workshops that you've held for me with dating, using self-exploration. And like, I just see it as such a fun process in itself. So I love that you do that. Thank you so much.
Of course.
So good. Okay. So any last words of wisdom for the Bravehearts who might be listening, who are currently just in the midst of heartbreak, or, I mean, it could be along all of the ends. Maybe they've gotten through heartbreak, they're starting to venture into dating, or the individuals who are just really like still in like, oh my gosh, my ex was everything, and I really just want my ex back.
I think that if you go up to like 50,000 feet and you look at, I'm in this crappy situation, like, we know it's not forever. And so being with yourself and not adding any extra blame or any extra shame or any extra guilt to it. It's like, don't throw fuel on the fire, but honor that like, this is just a dot on this giant like trail map of your life when you're all the way up there. And like, obviously there's going to be that fun, beautiful, expanded side on the other way. And from a soul contract standpoint, like, it doesn't mean that they won't come back around in some way, shape, or form. But it also, like, what really has been a massive thing in my own spiritual journey is realizing that the person who breaks your heart is the person who's literally breaking it open so that you're not guarded in your life. And like, that's a huge gift. My dad is actually the person who broke my heart. Like when I was 5, he went away. I talk about this a lot in my podcast. It was for the military, but like I totally had abandonment. And one of my stories was, oh, my dad broke my heart. And so the person that signed up, if you believe in soul contracts, to come down here with you and do that is the person that loves you on such a crazy, intense, like, 5D level that it's like, okay, I honor you. The part of me that still feels anything going on here is the part of me, like from a soul perspective, that loves you, because we all love each other unconditionally. It's just not in this lifetime to be married or to be romantic or to be sexual partners or whatever partnership you had. So for me, I always go up to 50,000 feet and just like think of it from that level, because the 3D is brutal and like, it's a lot easier to be like, okay, well, if I'm watching a movie right now, that's like 40, and then 5D, like, what's the point of the movie? Like, what's the plot? What's the artsy take on it? And then I think people who are dating, really just going inward with it before, like, wait till date 3 to like measure up the other person. So we all know that like first impressions aren't always everything, and people get nervous and people are distracted and people have other stories going on in their life. So use those first few days to see how you feel showing up, how you feel in your body, telling stories about yourself, how you feel, maybe trying on a new ego. We talked about that in the Get Over Your Ex program. Like, what if you want to come up, what if you're changing careers and it still feels a little weird to say that you're a podcaster or an artist or a teacher? Try that on and see how it feels in your body, because really that other person, especially because they're a stranger, is just showing up as like a canvas or a mirror for you. And so they're really giving you a gift of like you sitting with yourself too. So yeah, just going inward on those dates and really, not analyzing like too much, but really feeling into your experience with yourself versus measuring up them. Because if you feel really good in your body and you feel like, oh, this, like I felt comfortable, I felt safe, I felt like I expressed a new part of myself I've never seen, like those might be some good signs from just a you standpoint and your own growth. And if it just so happens that you think they're attractive and you want to see them again, great. As it progresses, you can do a little bit more of that like partnership stuff. Because what I've learned, especially with Jeff, is that you're in a healthy, grounded, dare I say perfect, but like the healthy partnership when you're both having your own spiritual self-growth journeys in the same house, like in the same bed, in the same bathroom, like, because I'm going to be going through my own roller coaster of my life for the rest of my life. And he's there alongside. So how does he hold space for me? Can he handle who I'm being today and who I might be tomorrow, who I think I want to be, who I don't think I want to be? Can I hold space for him? So it's really like feeling your own energy in the same space with this other person.
Obsessed. I don't even have anything else to add. Just mic drop. I love it. Thank you so much, Garrett. And I want you to share your amazing program that you have coming up. If people want to work with you, you have such a fun like at all times people can work with you, but I know right now in August, you have something beautiful starting. Can you share that with everyone?
Yes. So over the last, since the pandemic, I've been really focusing on, in my own life, feminine energy, feminine leadership, and also becoming a mom and being a mom. So the mastermind that I'm hosting is called the Mother Queen Mastermind, where we're going to be focusing on those 2 archetypes. So I'm looking at, the people that would be perfect for this are women who are thinking about getting pregnant, who are pregnant or already moms that are just having a really hard time shifting into motherhood and what that feels like, grieving your maiden. It's a very big transition. There's also special intuitive gifts in different chakras in our body that we can learn about and activate, which we'll be doing in the program, to harness that archetype and integrate that in our body. So we literally walk around like a different person, because you are when you're a mom. And then on top of that, the queen is also that CEO, that leadership energy, whether you're the leader of your household or you're the leader on a group in your company or you're the CEO of a company, there's very specific key codes in the queen archetype that work well with mother energy, especially if you want to birth a new project. It's not necessarily about birthing a human, but birthing something new, doing it from the feminine energy of the queen archetype and her intuitive gifts in the centers, the chakra centers that she's empowered in, is just like brain blown open quantum flip energy. So it is a $2,600 program. You get my food and body healing course with that, calling in 10 women. I have a few signed up, and it's 3 months. And so I would love to, if anyone feels like they're in that space, maybe they got over their ex through you, Dorothy, and now they're in a relationship and want to kind of embrace that level of leadership within themselves, their life, their relationship, their business. I would love to help them.
Yes, I love it. Thank you so much, Garrett. It sounds so delicious. It's like the way that I would describe it.
Ooh, thank you.
I've been loving all of like the quantum leaping and the quantum shifts lately. I feel like it's so fun.
Yeah, it's like like a quantum shift in like a breakup. If I were to actually share one, is the guy that I was explaining from Chicago. Like, here I am grieving him, and like 2 weeks later, it was like, Seth, who? That's a quantum flip. And they're not like, they don't have to happen. It's not like, oh, you aced it or you got it right if you had a quantum flip with your breakup, but they are possible. Like they can be. I had a quantum flip with an eating disorder, actually. So, you can just completely shift your energy. But the other thing about it is, and this is why I'm so glad you have this podcast and what you do, Dorothy, you can't have a quantum flip if you're not actually prepared to hold the manifestation on the other side. So if you're not prepared to be that single girl dating, living your best life, you're not going to have a quantum flip out of the breakup, right?
Yes.
You're not prepared to grow your business and be successful and furnish a whole house. You're not going to find the dream house overnight, which also happened to me. It's like, you have to have that like visionary and integration within yourself to hold whatever you want on the other side.
So good. I love it. Amazing. Thank you so much, Garrett. I love you. I love your energy. I love how you help your humans. So thank you so much for taking the time and speaking with me and the Brave Hearts. I know the Brave Hearts really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dorothy.
Love you.
Love you.
If you're loving the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast and you want to learn how to get over your ex and build a life bigger and better than the one you had with your ex, I would love to personally invite you to take this work deeper at breakupcoachdorothy.com/next steps.